Hey, I'm Dr. Brad Fanistel. I'm a board-certified internal medicine doctor in Colorado for the past 30 years, and I want to tell you why most anxiety treatments fail. It's really pretty simple. Our current treatment of anxiety, at least among mainstream psychiatry, is based on a 40-year-old outdated notion about what causes anxiety and what causes mood disorders. So, I like to tell people that there's no evidence in the medical literature anywhere that anxiety is caused by a chemical disorder or a chemical imbalance. A lot of people are like, I thought there was some sort of No, let me repeat. There's no evidence anywhere in the medical literature that anxiety or depression is caused by a chemical imbalance in the brain. None. And I would love it, any of you watching this, if you find a paper that says, hey, we found the chemical imbalance in the brain that causes anxiety or depression, please send it to me. I promise you that does not exist. That's a 40-year-old idea that came out of the 70s and the 80s, 1970s, 1980s, when we started discovering chemical receptors and neurotransmitters, and psychiatry thought, hey, we're going to get to join the scientific revolution here. We found drugs that can block certain receptors, and we give them to you, and people seem to feel a little different. Let's get into this and study this. Fantastic idea. Great theory. I wish it had panned out. In the mid-'80s, there's a book came out called The Broken Brain. It was written by Andreasen. I forget her first name. But she's a PhD, MD, psychiatrist. She's like the editor of the American Journal of Psychiatry. Pretty big mucky-muck psychiatrist, smart woman. The book was titled The Broken Brain. And it basically posited that mood disorders are caused by a chemical imbalance or anatomic problems in the brain. And we haven't quite figured it out, but we're on the road. Great theory. It didn't pan out. It's been 40 years. We're no closer to figuring something like that out because it's not caused by a chemical disorder or a chemical imbalance. I'm not saying chemicals aren't involved. I put chemicals into my brain. I might do it tonight with a beer. Things change. I'm just saying that there's not some chemical imbalance that is the cause of depression or anxiety. So the new neuroscience, let me just talk about the new neuroscience. The new neuroscience is based on brain circuitry, our new understandings of brain circuitry, and our new understandings of brain development. And this has come on over the last 10, 20 years. So brain circuitry, we talk about brains now in terms of circuits rather than primarily in chemicals because of the new technology called functional MRI, where we see real-time brain metabolism. And we can see when your amygdala lights up. We see other circuits, and some of these circuits have names, the salience circuit, the default mode network. They've been named networks because we can see circuits going in the brain. And so we're now understanding that anxiety is a message from your brain to the body to keep it safe. So anxiety is nothing more than the fight or flight response. When you get anxious, it's because your brain has decided to run a circuit that turns on a lot of stuff in the body to get you out of danger. It's protective. You want anxiety. I want anxiety. If I'm in a dark alley at night or I'm being chased by a lion, I hope I get it. We call it the fight or flight response. I'll run faster, I'll fight harder. So anxiety is a good thing. We need it to stay alive. No, it's not good when it's running all the time, but I'm just saying it's not a disease. And this is an important concept that we don't want to, if you want to improve your anxiety using the newest mind-body tools, the newest neuroscience, you have to start by understanding it's not a disease. There's nothing wrong with you. You don't have a broken brain. That's an old theory. What you have is a perfectly normal fight or flight response that's just running more than you wish it would. But everybody on the planet has had it. So I want to get away from the disease concept. Appendicitis is a disease. You should go see a surgeon. Heart attack with a blockage in your coronary artery, that's a disease. You should see the emergency room and a cardiologist. Type 1 diabetes, this is where the pancreas stops making insulin. That's a disease. You should go get medical attention. But not everybody on the planet has had appendicitis, heart attack, diabetes. Everybody on the planet has had anxiety. It's normal. It's not normal to run all the time, but in and of itself, it's a normal thing. It's not a disease. In fact, if you've never had anxiety, you are now dead because you didn't get yourself out of some situation. So it's this normal process. It's caused by brain circuits, and it's a protective alarm from the brain to the body to keep it safe. So the other big new idea in neuroscience over the last, I'd say, decade or two is that our new understanding of how brains develop. And brains are changing all the time. Brains are rewiring all the time. And during development, when you're first born, many of them, in fact, most of the neurons in your brain have not yet wired together in that long-term way that they're going to stay wired the rest of your life. Most of the neurons are sitting up here waiting to be told what to do. Some of the neurons are already wired together. You come out of the womb knowing how to suck on a nipple, you know how to breathe, you know how to, if you put food near your mouth, you know how to do it and swallow. That all was rewired. It was pre-wired. But all these other neurons are just waiting. And the neurons that are waiting to be told what to do learn what to do based on your experience. What experiences do you have day in, day out? And the newborn has tons of experience, all this new sensory input coming in. And we know that that your brain is wiring new neuronal connections together. That's called learning, and you can do it at any age, but it's doing it super rapidly when you're a kid. Estimates are that we're wiring 1 million new neuronal connections among these new neurons, 1 million new ones per minute when you're a little kid, maybe below the age of 7 or so, between 0 and 7. That's a ton of neuronal connections happening. And your brain does it according to what it needs. Oh, I should wire these, I should wire these based on what's happening to me today. So we're starting to talk about anxiety in terms of learned neural circuits, because A, we can see circuits, and B, we know how brains develop. They learn things along the way. So if you grew up, say you grew up and you had dyslexia, and you had to go to school every day. That right there, that might be enough for you to have gone, oh, every day was just a little bit like this. Your brain was a little hypervigilant every day. How can I get myself out of that reading situation? Or how can I avoid this? It wired some hypervigilance. Wasn't the worst thing in the world. May have gotten you out of some dicey situations. Maybe you had to walk on eggshells because one of your parents was going through a bad time or had an anger issue. So you had to walk on eggshells around your house. Maybe you had a brother who teased you. Maybe you had a bully at school for all year long. There was this guy at school. Maybe it was something like that. It doesn't matter what it was, but if there were times in your life where you kind of had to be like this, that's your brain learned to be hypervigilant, and it wired together a learned neural circuit. So when your brain does something over and over, it wires neurons together. That's true whether I'm hitting a tennis ball or I'm going skiing. If I do it every day, my brain wires neurons together and I get good at it. If your brain was practicing anxiety or hypervigilance day after day or for weeks or months, it got really good at it. It wired together that circuit. So this is a normal brain. We just want to retrain it. And just to slam home this idea about how normal this is, I see people with anxiety all the time, and I might say something with this after hearing a little bit of their story. I might say something like, okay, John, I've just heard 1/10,000th of your life story. But based on what I just heard about your dad or your brother or your cancer diagnosis 15 years ago or your divorce or whatever, just based on that, if I were to ask you, you ever notice you're a little on edge, a little kind of waiting for the next shoe to drop, just a little concerned about something bad could happen? And if you answered me, no, that's not me, no, I'm pretty chill, I'm not really worried about it, that would be a brain disorder. What's wrong with your brain? Was it not protecting you during this time? Was it not a little on edge? So anxiety is not a disorder. It's a normal brain that has learned to be a little bit like this. And you don't even really have to figure it out and go do a bunch of psychotherapy. You just have to recognize that a big part of your brain is outside of your conscious awareness, is devoted to keeping you safe. And this is the subconscious part of your brain, your autopilot part of your brain, that its main job, in fact, this is the number one job of the brain. If your brain can't do this, it can't do anything. Before you can think, before you can have relationships, your brain has to protect you, keep you safe and alive. So there's a big part of your brain devoted to that task, keeping you safe and alive. Most of the people I see with anxiety, their brain has just learned, yeah, I think I'm going to devote some neurons to that. And you can't just tell it, hey, I don't like this, stop it. Your brain's response is, I don't give a crap how you feel. I'm not trying to make you feel better. I'm trying to keep us alive, and I'm doing a pretty good job, actually. We're still plugging along here. I'm going to keep running this circuit. So we want to, let's just summarize here. The old neuroscience that has been completely debunked. Your brain or anxiety is not due to a chemical imbalance. Complete debunked. Please send me an article if you find something that says otherwise. Number two, and I'm reviewing this in my head. I don't think I said this before, but there's also no genetic abnormality. We mapped the human genome 20 years ago. Nobody's discovered a gene for anxiety. Maybe some genetic tendencies. I'm not saying there's no biology involved, but there's not an anxiety gene. And another common sort of misconception or old way of thinking about it is, these people just don't have the good coping skills. Are you freaking kidding me? This has nothing to do with coping. That is just absolute crap, that idea. Most of my patients with anxiety, have coping skills out the wazoo. They wake up every morning. They go to work. They go to school. They have relationships. They have a life. And many of the people, in fact, most of the people around them don't even know they have anxiety. That's because they're good copers. They're excellent copers, a lot of them. This is not about coping. I'm not talking about learning to cope better. Keep your coping skills. I'm a fan of those. I'm talking about rewiring some circuits that are down here in this primitive part of your brain so you don't have to cope with them anymore. But step number one is not telling yourself you're broken. If you tell yourself you're broken, then all of my additional tools, the newest neuroscience, the mind-body tools, all they do is just put a Band-Aid over your brokenness. And so we want to change the fundamental narrative here. You're not broken. You're okay. You're all right. I'm not trying to be dismissive or minimize anxiety. It sucks. But it's not a medical disease. It's a neural circuit. It's a learned neural circuit. And because of neuroplasticity, it can change. All circuits can change. So I hope you'll keep looking at this. You can do this. Go to my website, bouldermindbodymedicine.com. If you go to the video content, you can see me talking, some other TED Talks, or refer to some other talks you can watch, and start going down this new way of thinking about anxiety, because you can change these circuits. You can do it. I see people do it all the time. Thanks for listening, and hope to talk to you again soon.